Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Growing Up with Godzilla. This is season 2 of the show, and I am so happy to be back. This is my show where I have conversations with Godzilla fans about how they've grown with the character, how they've grown with the franchise over the years. And over the course of the first season, I had some phenomenal conversations with some wonderful human beings, and I am looking forward to continuing this throughout this season. There will be some returning guests, there will be some new guests. So, without further ado, I have a wonderful friend joining me today who has created a huge online presence in the Godzilla community filled with all sorts of great content for us to consume. And I've been kind of bothering him to collaborate with me for a while because I bother people. That's my favorite pastime. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome Monster Island Buddies to the show. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I am good. My wonderful friend Donny. I'm so happy to be here. I've actually been waiting for this invite because I'm just a big fan of everything you do, and I really respect you. And this is an honor.
Oh, well, likewise, I'm also a huge fan of you, and
Thanks.
I've been kind of like just consuming everything that you do, and I
Oh
love
boy.
it, and it inspires me. And I think as a fandom, we need creators like you who do a variety of things that just give us different vantage points of like just things to consume. So,
Oh, thanks. That's my
yeah.
pleasure. I'm having a lot of fun still. 12 years later, is it 12, 11, 12 years? It's still as fun. It's only getting more
Oh,
fun as I keep thinking like trying new things and meet new people, and it's just like it's a real good outlet for me.
12 years. That's
Think
impressive.
about 12. Yeah.
That is really impressive. So I guess I like to start things out like going way back a long time ago. Well, presumably a long time ago. Not everybody has been a Godzilla fan for 3,000 years like I have been. But how were you first introduced to Godzilla? Like, share your story and your experiences.
Yeah, no, it is a long time ago. I'm a little older than my average fan age, so I'm going back to like the '80s, and it's a little hazy, but I think my first exposure might have been the Godzilla in Pee Wee's Big Adventure.
But now that is unique. I have
It
not
was
had anybody say that yet.
it was either that or Godzilla versus Megalon. I think they were both very close together though. Because I remember
Ooh.
my mom picked up like one of those $2 VHS tapes filmed in like LP mode of Godzilla versus Megalon. And I don't know why I really took to this character. I just like did. I like immediately. And as the years went on and I was like kind of finding out, this is all pre-internet, like finding out there's also this movie and there's also that movie and how many movies are there and what order do they go in, and like just having to piece it together over my childhood through like late night marathons and stuff like that. I don't know, like it was really fun. It was like a mystery box that like I got to like earn like Godzilla made me earn him.
That was a wild time, like the late 80s, like early 90s, when there were like rumors of Godzilla films. We would get like toy sets that would reveal characters, and we'd have to like, sit for years with bated breath, being like, oh my God, like, does this character exist? What am I going to see this character?
Yeah.
It's so wild. It's so wild. And when I tell newer fans
I
that, they're just like, what?
I remember like before, because I was late in my house to have a computer with internet, but I remember going to my friend's house, and it was like one of the first times I got to sit on the internet, and like my other friends were there, and they were just like, having fun in the other room, and I was just sitting at the computer. And one of the first thing I did was just Google, or not even Google, but whatever the search engine was. Like once and for all, I wanted to know how many Godzilla movies there were, and I
Well,
looked it up, and I printed it all out so I could take it home. And my friend got so mad at how much ink it used.
yep. Been there, done that.
But that was a big day
Oh,
for me.
I like so was the search engine like Ask Jeeves or something? Like one of those
Oh
like
my
really
god,
early.
probably. Yeah, it
I,
was like probably like Yahoo or
oh, Yahoo.
Jeez.
So like it's interesting that you mentioned that because I just remember because I was rather late. Like I didn't get like my family didn't get a computer until like the early 2000s, which
Yeah.
compared to my friends is rather late. But when we got a computer, like I would print off everything, much to the dismay of my parents. Like I would go on to there was like this was it a site on geocities.com like that everybody had a
Oh, I
geocities.com
had a
account.
GeoCities, yeah.
I'm fairly sure I did too. And, like, I just remember, like, there was, like, this beautiful site with, like, kaiju profiles and stuff like that. So in my, angsty desire to write Godzilla fan fiction, very dramatic Godzilla fan fiction, I would
Mhm.
print off all of these and just keep, like, a portfolio. I called it a portfolio because I was trying to be bougie. I was like a portfolio of, like, kaiju profile. It was really bad.
That's great. I mean, like that's kind of how you had to do it then, because you couldn't like bring it with you on your phone or tablet or anything. Like once you left the desk, the internet stayed at the desk. So if you wanted to like, and you were probably using up your phone line, so you couldn't sit there and read it while
Oh,
you were on the computer. Yeah, so you kind of had to
yep.
print everything.
No, so, of course, we had dial-up internet, but my parents had, like, this call waiting for the internet, so, like, when somebody would call, it would kick you off the internet. So, like,
Oh yeah.
I would be, like, halfway through writing a fanfic on some website, and I would get kicked off the internet and lose it, like,
Oh my god. And it was like
oh.
a telemarketer too.
Yeah, it was like
Something
a
not even worth
pointless
it.
call, and I'm fairly sure that's where my childhood depression began, but that's
Uh,
besides the point.
origin story.
Right. Okay, when you were first introduced to
Mhm.
Godzilla, like, you said it was, like, in the '80s, so were you, like, in elementary school, middle school?
I was very young. I was like 6 or 7, and I started drawing him almost immediately. I have some terrible, terrible artwork I did of like the monsters as I understood them, because again, I was like piecing it all together. So there were some monsters I thought existed that didn't, or I thought like were related that weren't, like Gorgo or things like that. Like if I heard of a giant monster, I assumed it was in that same universe. And
I did too.
yeah, like it was very young.
I'm very curious to talk to people about how I call it their fanship. Their fanship with Godzilla,
Ah,
how it shifted as they got older. So like as you grew into a teenager, how did your love of Godzilla shift? Like did it end up, bleeding into additional outlets or anything like that?
yeah, that's a great question, because I don't think like if you graft my Godzilla love through my life, I don't think it's a straight up arrow. Kind of like came and went for over the years. Um, like I always watched the movies when I caught them on TV, but aside from that, like I wasn't like really. I didn't even know how you could celebrate Godzilla back then before the internet. But I wasn't like really doing anything else with it, or like trying to introduce friends to it or anything like that. It was just kind of like this um, oddity that always sucked me in when I caught it, but it's not something I was always like looking for. And
Right.
yeah, and then like, and then kind of what you alluded to before, when the '90s, late '90s came, and all the Heisei era films were coming to America finally. It was kind of like the same thing in my childhood all over again. Wait, how many of these movies are there? I have to find out. And it's like the whole thing started over. And and I would say I was like, I started getting real deep in during the Millennium era. Like that's when I was like visiting Godzilla websites regularly. I was trying to get bootlegs of the films like as soon as they were available on home media in Japan. Like I would say Millennium is the first like time I was really growing up with the movies, like into the movies.
That's awesome though. Like, well, and see the thing is like I like it's I've heard fans say that it was either the Heisei era for them or the Millennium era for them. And for me, like I spent like watching the Showa era like in the early 90s, but then once like you, once the Millennium era started happening, that's when I had that online presence.
Yeah.
There was a site that I frequented a lot. What was it called? TokyoMonsters.com. I don't know if you remember that site or not.
There was definitely two sites I kept going to, but I forgot what they were, and that was probably one of them.
Oh, like, I just remember, like, they would always the latest news. They would
Hmm.
always have, like, clips from the movies. Oh my god. Oh, okay, I'm gonna go on a tangent. Bear with
Okay.
me. So, Godzilla Tokyo SOS. When that came out, I mean, we all know, if anybody in the universe, in the ether did not know, I'm a fan of Mothra, right?
Uh-huh.
But the moment I saw that Mothra was in that film, I basically pissed myself. Like, I was just like, "Oh my god, Mothra is here." So then I noticed that they were uploading clips. They
Mhm.
uploaded a clip, like, it's some sort of promotional clip of the Mothra fairies or priestesses singing, like, some sort of, like, techno pop version of Mothra song to, like, this island, like, tropical landscape, and for
Uh,
some reason, like I wanted to be a Mothra fairy. That's what I wanted. I knew it at that time that that is what I wanted to be, and one of these days at G Fest, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
yeah.
I don't care what people say. I will do it.
Yeah, but you gotta find, like, a partner to go into that costume with you, like a doppelganger.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out, right?
Be
Um,
funny if you just, like, had a dummy-sized you attached to your side.
right. I would need to definitely work out though, because if I'm gonna wear like anything that shows like my low torso, like it's gotta
Yeah.
work out before that happens. So, because I have to look good, I have to look good for it.
Yeah, who doesn't wanna look
Okay,
good as a Mothra fairy?
right. So, okay, so it came and went for you, like in during the teenage years. Like
Yeah,
when
over, like, the decades of my teens and 20s, I would say.
so okay, so I would argue that a creative culmination for many of us as Godzilla fans, like creating outlets, right?
Uh-huh.
Like what I've done with this show, what you've done with your YouTube channel. Like, how did you go from being like, you know, little kid Godzilla fan to owning and operating one of the largest Godzilla themed YouTube channels and being like one of the like biggest content creators in the fandom? Like I want to know.
Well, thanks. Like a lot of successes I think people will have in their life, it was kind of by accident and something I wasn't doing purposefully. And which is funny because there's all sorts of other stuff I was doing purposefully that wasn't coming together, and this was kind of just something I did in the background for years. And I guess I guess you would say it started when I went to New York City and visited Tokyo SOS, which is like a toy store with a lot of Japanese imports and Godzilla toys, and I'd never seen those in a store before because I don't carry that like that much uh, Godzilla stuff and other Japanese toys. And I remember there was a huge display of Godzilla soft vinyls of all shapes and sizes, and I was with my friend, and I was like, I gotta get one. And so I picked the one that would eventually be the star of the skit show, Monster Island Buddies, and he was the first one I got. And I brought him home, and then sometime shortly soon after, my girlfriend at the time gifted me a King Ghidorah figure. So now I had the good guy and the bad guy. And then sometime shortly after, I think the next one I got was Jet Jaguar at another store. Um, and then by the time I had very few. I had maybe Rodan and Anguirus and Mechagodzilla and just those, and Gigan, I think. And I literally started the channel only having like 5 or 6 toys. And yeah, it was just one night with like no expectations of anything. I was just like fooling around with the figures and making up little skits that were like a minute long. and I threw them all on YouTube. And at the time, YouTube had a feature where you can like reply to videos with videos.
Oh, I miss that
So, do you
feature.
remember that?
I
Yeah, so
do.
I was like looking for all the big Godzilla accounts and just spamming them with replies to my
I
dumb
used to do that
skits.
too. That's how you'd get the views and the exposure.
Yeah, for sure. And then like, as I noticed there was a response and a bigger response than other stuff I was doing, it kind of made me want to just, hey, maybe I'll buy 3 more figures and have them shipped to the house, and maybe I'll get 2 more figures. And like as time went on, people started requesting characters, and the world just got bigger and bigger and bigger until I had a box full of soft vinyl Godzilla toys.
Ah, that's so interesting. And it sounds like it like started out gradually, but then it like turned into like this snowball effect of like growth, right?
Yeah,
S-
totally.
so looking at it now, like because obviously like Monster Island Buddies, like the channel, like it's doing a lot of different things. What is your like main vision for it now that you've grown this much?
You know, I think about that every day, and I never have a good answer. I like to I really like to get the obscure stuff and like find stuff that people, especially in America, don't really know about or forgot about, and bringing it to the community and being like, look at this, look at that. And I like see what happened was like maybe 5 or 6 years ago when the skit show kind of ended the first time, and then I premiered all these other shows. Around then, I suddenly got like really enamored with the culture of Godzilla. Like a lot of YouTube channels are talking about like behind the scenes of the movies and the histories of the filmmaking and all that really dense historical stuff. But like I've been fascinated with just the cultural impact and the other stuff, the mangas they tried, the advertising and commercials they tried, and and just like the kind of toys that were released both here and abroad. And so that's the kind of stuff that I like really want to bring to the audience more than anything. Yeah, I think especially the toys, because a long time ago the Playtime show where I showcased toys like surpassed, it flew past the Monster Island Buddies skit show in terms of views, and it became like the most popular show on the channel, and that's fine because I love doing that. And so I kind of see just a lot more of that in the future.
I absolutely love it. So see, you have a vision, but no, like I think that your response though was the wisest response to make because the truth is
Really?
like well, like I think we all have like our wishes and desires for what we want things to be like, but we also
Mhm.
kind of leave room open and knowing that things can shift. Like you could have a show that gets unexpectedly more popular than another one, right?
Yeah,
I think being a creator or artist, like I feel like we need to have that level of adaptability when it comes to our branding or our ultimate vision, right? So
absolutely. And I still try to get the stuff that I know won't rake in the views. I still try to sneak it in there. I try to plan it out like, okay, maybe 2 videos that I'm pretty sure will do well and 2 that are real wild cards per month or something like that. Um, and I've had some bombs, videos that I was really excited about and spent like weeks and weeks and weeks on, and then they just and
yeah.
it's always a chip in the armor. It never doesn't hurt, but
Yeah.
it's fine. At the end of the day, you could be proud of what you put out there and still put out the stuff that is more in line with what people want to see, and you can try to have it both ways. You can kind of balance it.
Yeah, I think because I know like when I first started, like I would get really in my head about like, oh well, this didn't do well. Why am I doing this? But now that
Uh-huh.
I've been doing this for over a decade, I'm just like, I'm gonna put out whatever I want. I'm gonna put out what I want. And if it's received and it gets a lot of views, great. If it doesn't, then at least I can say that I did it, right?
Yeah.
And like and see that's I was thinking that that would be the case for this show. Like I was like who's gonna want to watch this? Like, and then it ended up taking off a little bit, and I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
like, I guess I'll keep doing it. All right. So
Nice.
sometimes it unexpectedly happens, which is kind of
Yeah.
refreshing.
But like I understand what you're saying because especially the way the YouTube analytics works, like it makes it clear when a video is not doing well and it'll outright say like this video is doing shitty, man. You got to do something. Or it'll feel like
Yeah.
this video is doing great. What the hell did you do? Like it's very straightforward like that and it can really, if you're like someone like me and perhaps like you too who just can be sensitive to these kind of things, the way the analytics present is like, ooh, man, I really failed there, huh?
Right, right. Yeah. I was just thinking about because we met at G Fest this past year.
Yes.
And so it was really funny because I I didn't recognize who you were at first because I'm used to your persona, like with the mask and everything.
Right.
And then like kind of like halfway through the conversation, I was like, wait, I know this person. I recognize the voice. And then Alyssa Goji Geek 101 later was like, that's Monster Island Buddies, right? And I'm like, yes. Yes. So like it was so funny. Like, but it was
That
really
is funny.
like it was really wholesome because I going back to remember like our first interaction even before meeting.
Mhm.
You were so inviting.
Oh,
And
thanks.
that was so I'm trying to remember what it was that connected us. Was it like one of my videos or something? Or one of your
Um,
videos? Oh, what was it?
yes, I think you'd replied to my video about fan toxicity with your own video,
I
and you
did.
had some points
Yes.
you agreed with and some you didn't, but you worded it incredibly well and you weren't combative. You added to
Oh,
the
thank you.
conversation instead of like being all like, no, blah, fuck you. And I
Right, right.
really, I
Yeah.
really like because you did it that way, I really heard you and
Thank you.
appreciated how you did it. And then I was like, I want to be friends with this guy.
Well, and that's
Like, this is
the moment I watched your video, I was just like, this person is so well articulated with exploring this issue, which is an issue that I'm very passionate about. Like
yeah.
being LGBTQ plus, being like I've been subject to a lot of like fandom drama because it makes
Hmm.
people uncomfortable sometimes. Like knowing somebody who is open about talking about fandom dynamics is unbelievably refreshing. So
Mm.
that's like I was just like I want to engage in conversation with this person and hopefully maybe together we can continue to add momentum to the conversation, right? And I think it went very well. So yeah,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
it's just interesting like how people make that initial creative connection. And I just really valued that dialogue. You like invited me to join like a Discord server, which I was like, oh my god, nobody's ever invited me to a Discord server before. So it was very nice. Thank you for cultivating a warm, welcoming, inclusive environment through your platform. That's so important. I think that's so
I
very important.
appreciate it. And I'm not going to act like I don't have like blemishes on my own record. I've had my periods of time when I've been a dick and
Oh,
I've
me
been
too.
like off put. And it's always, you know how it is. It's always like something else and then it leaks into your online persona and suddenly like comments that you can normally, dismiss or really really get under your skin
Oh,
or
yeah.
you know how it is. I've been there and I'm not going to say like I've been so like super perfect and super chill all the time, but I do try my best.
Well, and I think that's like showcasing that is important though, because at the end of the day, like I think as we grow as people, we discover that the fandom is way bigger than we expect. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people assume that the Godzilla fandom's like this small little corner of the internet of, obscurity, but really it isn't. It's very huge. It's diverse, and I think that once we start realizing that this character, the films, and the other characters have impacted different people differently than we've been impacted, that like
Hmm.
really kind of opens our eyes to their experiences too. Like I've even in doing this show, I've discovered that like with other people who have gone through experiences that I've never even fathomed. And I feel like it's helped educate me in many different ways. It's helped me discover that like maybe a person behaving in a specific way isn't this, it could be this, you know? So
Yeah,
it's so interesting and very multi-layered too.
it is.
Uh,
And not to tangent too far on this, but
I
I
love
think you're
tangents, go
absolutely
for it.
I think you're absolutely right about like how huge the fandom is, and like how most of it, I would say most of it isn't doesn't have an online presence, or doesn't have a presence across every platform. Some people just love Godzilla, and that's kind of it. They're not gonna make a whole Twitter account about it. Um, and I think, and I fall into this trap too. I think it's easy for a few bad actors, two or three, to stir up discourse that everybody has to reply to, and make it feel like, that their presence is so much bigger and such a big percentage of the community. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I was trying to communicate in that old podcast. I'm not sure if I like got it exactly right.
I think you
Um,
did.
oh, thanks.
No, I would say you did, for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, that's where I always try to remember anyway. Whenever like I see tweets like, "Oh, there's Godzilla discourse." Everyone's talking. I always see the reactionary tweets before I find the tweet that pissed everybody off.
Right.
So I'm always like, "What's everyone talking about?"
Well, and let's be honest, Twitter is just like this space where people stand on hills screaming into
Yeah,
the void, right?
for sure.
But like, no, I agree with you 100%. And I unfortunately, like, I feel like some of the more like hateful voices typically tend to be the loudest. And I've
Of
noticed
course.
also that, like it really depends on how we respond to that hate too. Like
Yeah.
one of my big issues is that in the past, like I would respond to hate by being petty or retaliatory or rude
Hmm.
about it. And then I ended up learning that, like that, like, yes, have a conversation, maybe turn it into an educational moment. But if that person's not receptive to it, don't try to push the subject too far because if they're not receptive to it, then what good are you doing really, right? You're just
Yeah,
frustrating
and
yourself.
that's what you're describing is not even exclusive to a fandom. That's like a life skill that everyone needs
Oh
to have.
yeah.
Like that's politics discussions now. That's every conversation now involving this global village, this earth that's all concentrated into like one social media site now.
Yep. Yep. You're so right.
Like you're totally right though. Like that's, I mean, even if I can keep my cool in like a Godzilla discussion, maybe somewhere else I'm blowing up about a political discussion.
Right. Oh my goodness,
Again,
same
it's all,
here.
yeah, it's all like what day you get me and what mood I'm in. But
If I've had coffee, then you know it's going to be okay. If I've not had coffee, then ooh, Donnie's gonna be a hot mess. So, okay. I'm always curious and I love to ask my guests this
Mhm.
question. Which which Godzilla films are your favorite and why? Like which ones really stood out to
Yeah.
you over the years?
Um, it's such a boring answer, but I'm gonna say the first one as one answer.
That's not a
Both.
boring answer.
I feel like everyone says that, but and you know what? I'll even say both versions, Japanese and American. And the reason is because like that one, I don't think that's just like a good Godzilla movie. I think that's a good movie. Like I think that's a really well made film. I love movies and plots that set up impossible scenarios. So I loved the decision that had to be made about the oxygen destroyer. Like I really I loved that. I love the Japanese version, and then I like the American version because I just think it was interesting what they did and how it. I think it kind of worked. You can argue whether they needed to do it or not, but like they did it, and for the most part, I'm actually impressed with what they pulled off for the splicing and Raymond Burr, all that stuff. So I really love the first movies. Um, Megalon has a special place in my heart, but not one I like to rewatch a whole lot. And I really like Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, because like if you put
Ah,
all the Showa films together, that's like a real turning point in the story.
yep.
In terms of introducing the villain and Godzilla officially switching sides and Mothra becoming like the leader, and
My
it's just a
queen.
good, Yeah, and it's just like I always say, like when people ask what one to watch first, that's a good candidate because it's got a little bit of everything. It's not overly long, and it has like a full character arc for Godzilla, which a lot of them don't have.
This is true. Like, well, so the early show up, like I would say, like based on what you said about the first Godzilla film, that I feel like the human characters are the most human we
Hmm.
see throughout the entire franchise. Like we see like the full breadth of their flaws, their
Yeah,
conflicts, like what really makes them tick as characters, right?
absolutely
Um,
agree.
yeah, and I think in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, we start seeing that, but with the kaiju characters. Like I
Yeah,
feel
you're
like
right.
that was like one of the first times we saw kaiju characters like communicating with each other, thinking, like being petty to one another, right? At
It's
least
so petty. Like, what
like
do we care about
Godzilla
humans? They just bully us. Get out. Yeah, we don't care.
like Godzilla and Rodan being petty toward one another, and then Mothra being done with their bullshit, and then Ghidorah being like very like just the embodiment of cruelty, like so wonderful, like so wonderful.
Yeah,
Like I agree with you. Like that would be a good recommendation for a first time Godzilla fan.
yeah, for sure. It's got
Yeah.
it all. It's got the cheese. It's got the drama. It's got everything. Those are my favorites. If jumping over to Heisei, I think I would have to say there's two that have a special place in my heart. One is versus Destoroyah, and the
Uh,
other is the time travel shenanigans of King Ghidorah. Just
we
so
love ourselves
so
with time
B.
travel.
It's so B movie. It's so schlocky, but it's so fun to watch.
Oh, yeah, the haste. Well, like I just the Futurians, like
Hmm.
I think that's what they're
Yeah, it's
called, right?
awful. Yeah.
Like they are so zany.
I think it takes you can respect and appreciate the entire Godzilla filmography and still admit that like a lot of it's just bad movie making or just schlocky or just like not as put together as it could have been. And that's one of the things I love about the films as well, because I do love, it wasn't just Godzilla I grew up on. I love midnight movies and I love like the independent stuff and the directors that made a lot with a little. And like I always have respect for that. And yeah, like even when he's bad, I think Godzilla's good. And he can be bad a lot. And that's fine.
Right, yeah, and well, and I think I talked about this with Travis in the last episode of the prior season. Like, you have to
Mhm.
be able to laugh about it too.
You have to.
Like, and I know that people like there are a lot of people who just associate Godzilla with like just like this slapstick humor, two people in a suit battling, right?
Yeah.
And we know that there is more of an art to it, that there is like socio-political significance to it, and
Mhm.
entertainment value. But like I think that being able to laugh about it is also part of the wholesomeness of the entire franchise, at least in my
Yeah, for
opinion.
sure. No, I absolutely agree. Um, and when they do things like Futurians, like that's when I'm on board. I'm like, yep, that's brilliant.
Or the terrible relationship in Godzilla versus Mothra 92, where like we get the Indiana Jones sequence at the beginning where it's like so ridiculous.
Yeah.
I Oh, there were so many moments.
The franchise has been going for so long now that there is like a tone. There's a Godzilla film with a vibe for everyone at this point. If you want something serious and thought out, you've got a movie. If you want schlock, you've got a movie. If you want human growth, you have a movie. If you want monster growth, you have a movie. Like there's something for everyone at
Right,
this point.
right.